The first stage of realization, as I described in my series on the ox herding pictures, the first ox herding picture, which is a stage, and the stage is realizing you suffer, that you actually, it's authenticity. First stage is authenticity. Once you've gone through that stage, and but it kind of sucks because what happens then is it's like you open the door and it really comes in. Then it surprises you, right? Then you're like, sometimes you don't even relate it to this process that you had some opening, or maybe you took some, I don't know, DMT or some shit, but you had a real opening, and then feels so vast and amazing and connected and interconnected. And you run around trying to be the local guru and tell everybody how asleep they are and that you're awake now. But then it's followed by this intense emotional stuff, right? Really intense emotion of fear or dread, or like, fuck, where did this come from? That's what it means to realize that first stage, I would say, is like the first noble truth of Buddhism. Life is suffering. Doesn't mean it has to be suffering. Doesn't mean it's constant suffering, but a certain level of authenticity comes online where you're like, damn, like I'm really hurt, like underneath all of the bullshit, underneath all of the layer after layer of internal identity, constantly bouncing back and forth in my mind, and thoughts, and then the external, where I bounce it off people all day long that help me go into complicity. When I stop doing that long enough, I'm really miserable. And so that's important. That's an important insight. Perhaps you could say that's the first case of Satan with Job. It's something that you just discover in yourself. Then you might say, well, why would God actually send that to you? Right? Why would God send suffering to you? Why would God send resistance to you, or the one who resists to you? Why would that? That doesn't make sense, does it? But it actually does make sense. But it takes a long time along this path, I think, a lot of insight to really get to this different understanding of suffering. That as much as it sucks, as much as it drives our whole process to want deeper insight, to wake up from suffering, without it, I'm not sure this process would propagate for most people. So it actually turns out to, let's say, use the word divine, because we're talking about biblically, turns out to be quite divine. It turns out to be very important. As miserable as it is to the human, as miserable it is to the seeming individual, it's miserable because it's burning up that seeming individual, the thing that feels like it's separate from everything, the thing that feels like it needs to manage everything in the world and its life, and gets confused about what's internal and external, and is addicted to struggle with thoughts, struggle with emotions, struggle with other people, struggle with the world. It's addicted to struggle. The discomfort of that and resistance to it drives this process, in my experience, for the most part. There's no rules to this. You don't have to suffer to wake up. You don't have to have had massive suffering in your life to wake up. You don't have to have had massive trauma, but it really helps. It just does. And if you haven't, and you're kind of interested in this stuff, and you feel stuck, or you feel like you know there's something to it, but you've kind of been going through the motions for a couple of years, often some tragedy will come along. Now, I'm not saying that that's intentional or intelligent, like there's something there just waiting to fuck you up, but life, is innately unpredictable, or inherently unpredictable. So it's not uncommon that something tragic or some major rug pull in your life is what leads to the shift, often. So the tragedy is just another form of, we could say, suffering.